What happens when a CEO walks into his own pizza shop and hears employees trashing the company loud enough for customers to hear? Xavier Ruckley sat behind the wheel of his rental car, staring at the small pizza shop tucked between a vape store and a laundromat just outside of Cleveland. This was store number 6 out of the 8 he owned since buying the once-failing chain 6 years ago. Most of the stores were doing fine. Numbers were okay. But store 6 had been dipping for 4 straight quarters. Customer complaints were vague slow service, unfriendly staff, food not hot enough, but nothing concrete. His district manager visited twice and said it was just a tough location. Xavier didn't buy it. He hadn't personally met the staff at this location. They were hired by the previous owner or brought in by a former manager before turnover swallowed half the roster. It was a corporate-owned branch, so no one here would recognize him. Plus, he was dressed in a faded hoodie, jeans, and a beanie. A little scruff on his face helped, too. He looked more like a college kid than the guy who signed their paychecks. He locked his car and crossed the street. Inside, the place looked tired. The walls were faded, the menu boards buzzing faintly, and the glass counter had smudges all over it. A girl behind the counter, maybe 21, didn't even look up when he walked in. "Yo, someone get this guy," she called toward the kitchen. A guy with greasy hair and a board looked shuffled over. "What do you want?" "Just a slice," Xavier said. The guy didn't respond, just turned and grabbed a lukewarm slice from the warmer, slapped it on a plate, and slid it across the counter. "That's $3. Xavier paid in cash and sat down near the window. The pizza was chewy and barely warm, but that wasn't the worst of it. From the kitchen, he could hear everything. "This job's a joke," the girl said. "Can't believe they expect us to care when they don't give a damn about us." "Right," the guy replied. "Place is falling apart. They never fix anything and then act shocked when customers complain. Let them complain. I'm not breaking my back for minimum wage." Xavier froze mid-bite. "That guy out there?" the girl added, laughing. He looked at the pizza like it owed him money. "I should have told him to go somewhere else." Xavier's stomach turned. He wasn't some fragile CEO who expected everyone to love the job, but you don't talk like that in front of customers. You don't trash the company while you're wearing the apron. He stood and walked back to the counter. "Hey," he said calmly, "do you guys have a manager here today?" The girl rolled her eyes. "He's in the back." "You got a problem?" "I just want to talk to him, that's all." A minute later, a man in his mid-30s came out. Slightly overweight, stubble, and a phone still in his hand. His name tag read Mike. "What's up?" Mike asked. Xavier gave a relaxed smile. "Just had a question about the menu. But I'll come back later. Might be too busy today." Mike shrugged. "Suit yourself," he muttered before heading back. Xavier left the shop and sat back in his car, watching from across the street. He watched a mom and her daughter walk in, wait 5 minutes without being acknowledged, and walk right back out. He watched one of the employees openly scroll on their phone while leaning on the counter. He wasn't mad yet. He was disappointed and a little ashamed. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped paying attention. Trusted the wrong people too long. This wasn't just a bad store. It was a store that had been left to rot. And the people working inside? Some of them didn't care. But maybe someone did. He pulled out his notepad and flipped to a clean page. Tomorrow, he'd come back. But not as a customer. He'd come as a new hire, someone looking for a part-time job after getting laid off. He'd see what it was really like behind the counter. And then, he'd decide who deserved to stay. And who had to go. Xavier returned the next morning at 9:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the store opened. He wore an old windbreaker, khaki pants, and sneakers that had seen better days. He'd shaved the scruff but left his hair uncombed. "Nothing about him," said owner. He carried a folded resume in his back pocket, light on details, just enough to pass as someone job hunting after being laid off from a warehouse job. The lights were on inside, but the front doors were still locked. A guy with headphones in wiped down a table with one hand, barely checking it. Through the smudged glass, Xavier tapped twice. The guy looked up, annoyed, and waved him off without removing the headphones. Xavier waited. 2 minutes later, a woman in her late 30s opened the door halfway. She didn't greet him. "You early for pickup?" she asked. "I heard you were hiring." "I'm looking for part-time," Xavier said. She looked him over, then sighed.
"Talk to Mike.
"He's in the back." She walked away, without another word. Inside, the air smelled like old pepperoni and cleaning chemicals. Xavier waited at the counter. A moment later, Mike came out with a Red Bull in one hand and a clipboard in the other. His eyes scanned Xavier once, uninterested. "You said you're here for the job?"
"Yeah, part-time.
"Nights and weekends, if possible." Mike looked at the clipboard. "Don't care when you work, long as you show up. You got kitchen experience?" "I've done dish pits, never pizza." Mike shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You'll be on prep and register. If you don't suck, you'll mop it close too." Xavier nodded. Mike tossed him a faded apron off a hook near the office door. It smelled faintly of fryer oil. "You start now. Let's see if you're worth keeping." Xavier put the apron on and followed Mike to the back. There were 6 people on the schedule, 2 on prep, 2 on front, 1 floater, and Mike.
No one introduced themselves.
A tall kid with a neck tattoo pointed him toward a stack of pepperoni logs and a dull knife. "Start slicing. Try not to bleed on it." Xavier worked quietly, listening more than speaking. By 10:30, the first orders came in. A family came in with 2 young kids. The cashier, the same woman who had let him in, barely looked up from the screen. "What do you want?" The mom flinched. We'll take a large cheese, garlic knots, and 2 sodas." The cashier tapped the screen impatiently. "Name?" "Jenna." The woman paid, then waited, and waited. 15 minutes passed. The large cheese sat in the warmer, unbagged. The garlic knots hadn't been dropped. The kids were getting restless. Xavier watched, still slicing pepperoni. No one moved to fix it. He stepped toward the fryer. "Hey," he said, "are these the garlic knots for Jenna?" The floater shrugged. "Probably. Should we get them in?" The cashier rolled her eyes. "If you want to be a hero, knock yourself out." Xavier dropped the knots in the fryer. The kids were bouncing by the time the food reached them. The mom smiled weakly, thanked him, and left. The cashier didn't speak to him again that hour. By noon, the lunch rush started. Orders piled up. The kitchen got loud. One of the prep guys disappeared for a smoke and didn't come back for 20 minutes. The other muttered curses under his breath while trying to stretch dough with ripped gloves. At one point, a delivery driver came in, tossed a bag on the counter, and shouted, "That's the 3rd wrong order this week." Mike didn't come out of the office. At 1:20, a woman in a motorized wheelchair rolled up to the counter. The cashier didn't acknowledge her. After a long pause, the woman said, "Excuse me? Can I order?" The cashier didn't look up. "You're gonna have to come around to the side if you want me to hear you." I can't get closer. The counter's too high." The cashier sighed, finally stepping closer. Her tone didn't change. "I need a large veggie, thin crust. And no dairy, please." "Fine." The woman paid, moved to the side, and waited. Xavier leaned in toward the guy working the oven. "Dairy-free cheese on that." The guy blinked.
"We don't have that."
She asked for no dairy. "Then it's just sauce and veggies." She paid full price. "Not my problem." Xavier stepped toward the counter again. She asked for thin crust. "That's thick." The cashier looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're not the boss. Back off." Xavier stared at her. "I'm not trying to be anything. Just trying to do what's right." She turned away. The woman in the wheelchair got her pizza 25 minutes later. No apology, no eye contact. She left without saying anything. At 3:15, Mike finally emerged, yawning. "All right."
break time.
You new guy go sit for 20. Xavier sat on an upside-down pickle bucket in the back corner. The mop closet smelled like mildew. He drank from the water bottle he'd brought and watched the others. The cashier was texting behind the register. The prep guy hadn't restocked anything. The oven guy was watching a video on his phone with the volume turned up. Mike leaned against the soda fridge, laughing with a floater about a customer who had called earlier to complain about raw dough. She said her kid got sick. I told her maybe teach her kid to chew. They both cracked up. Xavier finished his water and stood. He walked back to the line and started restocking the cheese bins without being asked. The prep guy looked confused. You know you don't have to do that, right? I know. By 5 o'clock, dinner orders started rolling in. One of the front staff left early. No explanation. Just tossed her apron on the counter and walked out the door. Mike barely reacted. Xavier covered register. A couple with a baby came in. They were polite. The baby smiled at him. He made a small face back. They laughed. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. The cashier, now back and half watching TikTok on her phone, muttered, "You're not here to entertain babies. Move the line." Xavier didn't reply. At 7:45 p.m., a teenager with Down syndrome came in with what looked like his older brother. They ordered 2 small pizzas and waited at a table. When the food was ready, no one brought it out. The brother approached the counter. "Is the food ready?" The cashier pointed vaguely at the warmer. "Take whatever's got your name." The teen walked up and tried to grab the boxes. One slipped. The top came off, cheese sliding onto the counter. The cashier groaned. "Seriously?" Xavier moved fast. He grabbed napkins, cleaned up the mess, and offered to remake the pizza. "It's fine," the brother said. "We'll wait." Xavier turned to the oven guy. "Can we get another small cheese in?" The guy looked at Mike, who'd just come out again. "You don't take orders from him," Mike said. "I'm not giving orders," Xavier replied. "I'm asking for decency." Mike stepped closer. "You want to make the pizza, make it. But don't tell my staff how to do their jobs." Xavier looked him in the eye. "I'm not telling anyone anything. I'm watching what kind of place this is." Mike laughed. "You've been here one day. You don't know anything." Xavier didn't answer. He walked back, made the pizza himself, boxed it carefully, and brought it to the teen with a quiet, "Sorry about that." The teen smiled. "It's okay. Thank you." It was quiet for a moment. Then the brother said, "You're the only person here who's treated us decent." Xavier nodded once. "I hear you." By 9:15, the last pizza went out. Mike called out, "All right, everybody finish up. We're done." No one moved to clean.
Xavier, graba a mop.
The floor was sticky, the trash bins overflowing. He worked silently. The cashier clocked out without a word. The prep guy did the same. Mike didn't say goodbye. At 9:45, Xavier left, walked across the parking lot, and sat in his car. He didn't turn the engine on. He sat in the dark for a long time, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the store's neon sign flicker in the window. He'd seen enough. Tomorrow he'd come back. Not as a new hire. Not as a customer. But as the man who owned the building, the ovens, the paychecks, and the right to decide who stayed and who never stepped foot in that kitchen again. Xavier arrived an hour before opening and waited near the back exit in his car. The plan wasn't complicated. He'd already contacted his HR coordinator the night before to pull employee files and confirm what he suspected half the current team hadn't had a performance review in over a year. 3 write-ups on file for Mike. None followed up. No documentation on customer complaints. 1 glowing review, though a prep cook named Luis, hired 6 months ago, with perfect attendance and no incidents. Xavier had the keys to the building. At 8:45 a.m., he walked through the back door and into the kitchen. 2 staff members, the tattooed kid and the prep guy from the day before, were hunched over, scrolling through their phones. They looked up confused. "Who are you?" asked the one with the gauged ears. Xavier took off his jacket, hung it on the hook near the cooler, and faced them. "I'm Xavier Ruckley. I own this store." Silence. The tattooed one stood upright. "Wait, what?" "I was here yesterday," Xavier said. "I worked a full shift. I saw how this place runs." The prep cook backed toward the exit. "I didn't know," Xavier held up a hand. "Don't worry. You're not the reason I'm here." Luis came in through the back a few minutes later, early again. He saw Xavier, froze, and started to speak. Xavier nodded. "Take a seat over there, Luis. I want to talk to you later." Luis looked unsure but obeyed. The front door rattled. The cashier arrived, sipping from a plastic cup and wearing the same faded hoodie from the day before. She pushed through the kitchen swinging door, spotted Xavier, and stopped. "You're the guy from yesterday." "I'm the owner," Xavier said evenly. "And we need to talk." She looked toward the exit. "If you leave now," Xavier said calmly, "you lose your job without explanation on your record. If you stay and speak honestly, I'll listen." She crossed her arms but didn't move. Mike showed up last. He was 10 minutes late, holding a breakfast sandwich in one hand and sunglasses in the other. He entered through the back, talking into his phone. Xavier waited until he hung up. Mike glanced around, saw everyone silent, and finally noticed Xavier. "Who are you?" Xavier didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the middle of the kitchen and turned to face him directly. "I'm the reason you've been getting a paycheck for the last 9 months. I'm the one who hired you through corporate referral. And I'm the one who's been watching this store decline under your watch." Mike's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "You can't just walk in here and—" "I can," Xavier interrupted. "And I did." Mike looked to the others. No one moved. Even the prep cook who had barely spoken the day before now stared at the floor. "I'm shutting the store down for the day," Xavier said. "We're not opening. We're going to have some conversations first." Mike scoffed. "You're kidding me? On a Saturday?" "No," Xavier pointed to the office.
You.
"In there." Mike stepped in, still trying to look unfazed. Xavier followed and shut the door. Mike dropped into the chair behind the desk. "So what now? You gonna try to pin the whole thing on me?" "No," Xavier said. "Just your part." "Which is big." Mike leaned back. "It's a hard store. Bad location, low traffic. I was here yesterday. I watched you ignore complaints, disappear for hours, and let your team do whatever they wanted. That's not fair."
You don't know what they're like.
"I know exactly what they're like. I worked beside them. You didn't." Mike didn't respond. "You have 3 write-ups. One of them for yelling at an employee in front of customers. That was taken out of context. There's no context where that's acceptable. You never followed up on any of the customer complaints. You let staff treat guests however they wanted. You let a kid with disabilities get humiliated and did nothing." Mike looked away. "You're done here," Xavier said. "Effective immediately. Your final check will be mailed." Mike stood, knocking the chair back. "This is bull. Don't speak to me like that." Xavier's voice didn't rise, but the force behind it was unmistakable. Mike stepped back, opened the door, and stormed out without another word. Xavier waited until the front door slammed shut before calling in the cashier. She walked in slowly, arms crossed. "I know what you're going to say," she began. "No," Xavier said. "You don't." She sat without being asked. "I've had a rough couple months. My mom's been sick. I've been doing double shifts and stop." She blinked. "I'm not here to hear excuses. I'm here to ask you one question. Do you think the way you spoke to people yesterday was acceptable?" She hesitated. "No, then why did you do it?" "I guess I just stopped caring."
Why?
She looked down. "I applied for a raise 3 times. Never got a single reply. Mike kept bumping hours off my schedule. I didn't know who to talk to. None of that excuses how you treated people." "I know." Xavier studied her face.
There was no bitterness now. Just fatigue,
and something close to shame. "You're not fired," he said, "but you're off the register. For now, you'll be in the back helping prep. If I see one more act of disrespect, one more moment of laziness, you're out." She looked up quickly, surprised. "I don't expect perfection," Xavier said, "but I do expect decency." She nodded slowly. "Okay. Go clean up the front. Then clock in." She left without arguing. Luis entered next. He sat, silent but attentive. Xavier leaned forward. "I've read your file. You've been here 6 months. Never late, never called out. But no one mentioned your name when I asked who the best worker was."
Luis Trag.
"I just do my job. Why haven't you spoken up about the conditions here?"
Luis Gesetati.
"I didn't think it would matter." "It does. Starting today, you're going to be the lead prep. You'll train new hires, help with scheduling, and I want your input on how to fix things."
Luis Sayabrous Lifta.
"Me? You've earned it." He nodded slowly. "Okay. Yeah. I'll do it."
Xavier Stut.
Go get started. Over the next hour, Xavier made 2 phone calls. One to HR to initiate a hiring campaign for 3 new staff. The second to maintenance to get the front counter lowered and the menu boards replaced. By noon, the store was still closed, but the team was working. The kitchen was cleaner than it had been in weeks. The register was wiped down. Luis had taken charge of the prep line. The cashier, now in the back, was slicing vegetables in silence, but with care. At 2 p.m., Xavier gathered them near the ovens. "This store has been broken for a long time," he said. "Not because of location, not because of customers. Because no one was held accountable. That ends now." No one spoke. "I'll be here for the next few weeks, helping train a new manager. We have high standards. You meet them, you stay. You don't, you go. But if you work hard and treat people with respect, you'll be rewarded." He looked around the room. "Starting tomorrow, everyone's pay goes up by $1 an hour. And Luis gets 2. Heads turned. Earn it. Keep it." Then he turned to the front windows and unlocked the door. The neon sign buzzed to life. The store was open again. But it was no longer the same. The next morning, Xavier arrived just after the sun crested over the strip mall rooftops. The lot was mostly empty, except for Luis, already waiting by the back door with his coat zipped and a quiet sense of readiness in his posture. Xavier unlocked the door and nodded toward him. Early again. Luis stepped inside and began tying his apron. "I figured I should see what this place looks like before the lights come on." Xavier flicked on the kitchen switches. "Good instinct. Let's build from that." By 7:30, a cleaning crew arrived contracted overnight and began gutting the grease traps, scrubbing under equipment, and replacing the stained floor mats. A few of the older prep bins were swapped for clean ones Xavier had ordered from a restaurant supplier the night before. The smell of ammonia hung in the air, but it was better than what it replaced. The cashier, her name was Janelle, entered 5 minutes before her shift. She paused near the staff sink when she saw the shining floors and the new prep board. "Did someone pressure wash the air in here?" Xavier looked up from where he was adjusting a shelf in the walk-in. "Not quite. But we're not serving food on top of grime anymore." Janelle didn't say anything more, just washed her hands and started slicing onions with her eyes focused and her back straight. At 9:15, a new face came through the door. A stocky man in his early 40s wearing a crisp black shirt and jeans, carrying a clipboard. His name was Terrence, a veteran manager from one of Xavier's top-performing stores in Columbus. He'd agreed to temporarily relocate for 60 days to help stabilize the location. He didn't waste time with introductions. He shook hands, reviewed the schedule, and began observing every station with quiet precision. By 10 o'clock, the first customers walked in. An older man with a newspaper under his arm and a young woman in scrubs. Janelle took their orders politely, punched them in quickly, and offered water while they waited. No side glances.
No size. No shortcuts.
Luis moved seamlessly between the prep bench and the oven, checking dough stretch, applying toppings consistently, and calling out orders as they moved through the line. Xavier stayed behind the scenes, watching. Not hovering, just present. At 11:40, the daughter of the woman in the wheelchair from 2 days earlier returned. This time, she came alone, glancing around the room cautiously. Xavier noticed the tension in her shoulders as she approached the counter. Janelle leaned forward slightly, voice steady. "Welcome. What can I get started for you?" The woman hesitated, then said, "I'm just picking up a veggie pizza. No cheese." Janelle tapped the screen. "For Amanda?" She nodded. "It's on the warmer. We used olive oil instead of butter on the crust, like the note said. Let me box it fresh." She walked over, pulled the pizza from the warmer, swapped it into a new box, and folded the flaps cleanly. "Thanks for coming back." Amanda smiled faintly. "It feels different in here. We're working on it." When she left, Xavier stepped to the back, where Terrence was watching the dough rise in the proofer. "Thoughts?" Terrence nodded slowly. "It's still sloppy in a few spots. But they're trying. That's worth something. Keep pushing. Don't give them room to drift." "I won't." By mid-afternoon, Xavier sat with Luis in the back office while Terrence ran the floor. Luis had a notebook out, scribbling rough notes about inventory levels and prep targets. "You're thinking ahead," Xavier said. Luis capped his pen. "I've been watching how much gets thrown out. It's a lot more than it should be. I think we can cut waste by about 20% if we prep smaller batches and restock more often." "Do it."
Luis nodded.
"Can I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Why me? You've got other stores. Other people." Xavier leaned back. "You showed up. You worked hard when no one was watching. You didn't complain and you didn't coast. That matters." Luis lowered his eyes. "I just never thought anyone would notice." "Well, I did. And now others are watching you." At 4:30, a new trainee arrived. Her name was Nadine, early 20s, soft-spoken, and visibly nervous. She'd been hired that morning from a local job fair. Janelle, now off register, was assigned to shadow her. Xavier watched from the prep bench as Nadine fumbled with the gloves, struggling to adjust them. "You're fine," Janelle said gently. "Everyone looks like a raccoon trying to peel an orange their first day." Nadine laughed, tension breaking. By 6, the store was busy. The front line moved steadily, with Terrence calling out updates and Janelle now running register again. Luis managed the line, correcting mistakes with a calm tone and quick hands. The atmosphere wasn't perfect, it was still a bit stiff, and some orders took longer than they should, but the difference was impossible to ignore. At 7:15, a man in a delivery uniform from a different restaurant walked in and leaned on the counter. "Can I get a slice?" Janelle nodded. "We're out of singles right now, but we've got a fresh half pepperoni. I can cut you a piece." "That works." She boxed it cleanly and handed it over. The man looked around before taking the first bite. "You guys used to be rough. This is way better." Janelle didn't say anything.
She didn't need to.
At 8:30, Xavier called a brief huddle in the back. The night shift was still winding down, but he wanted to say something while the energy was still fresh. "I've seen more progress in one day than I expected in a week," he said. "But don't mistake improvement for arrival. This is the starting line." No one interrupted. "Tomorrow, we begin interviews for permanent hires. We're building a new team, not patching a broken one." He turned to Janelle. "You've got 3 weeks to prove you belong in the front. You keep showing what you did today, and the register stays yours." She nodded. To Luis, "You'll work with Terrence to set up prep protocols. End of the week, I want her plan on my desk." Luis gave a quiet "yes, sir," not out of fear but commitment. As the team dispersed to finish closing, Xavier lingered in the dining area, watching the last few customers leave. One of them, a teenager with earbuds, paused at the door and turned back. That guy who was here before? The manager? Xavier raised an eyebrow. What about him? He used to yell at people. Glad he's gone. Xavier gave a single nod. So am I. At closing, Terrence ran the final checklist, verified the drawer, and locked up. The team filtered out one by one, exhausted but upright. Xavier stood outside with Luis, who was the last to leave. You sure you're ready for this? Luis exhaled. I wasn't yesterday, but I think I am now. Xavier extended his hand. Luis shook it firmly. See you tomorrow, Xavier said. As Luis walked off, Xavier looked back at the store. The signs still flickered a little. The paint still needed touching up. But inside, something had changed. Not everything was fixed, but for the first time in a long time, it was finally worth fixing.